Chapter 28 Carbon and its Compounds. Today we are going to discuss about carbon and its compounds. In your previous chapter, you studied about metals and non-metals. Carbon is an important non-metallic element. Why we study about carbon as a chapter, carbon and its compounds? There are a lot of other elements which are important for us, but we didn't study about any element in detail. But we are going to discuss about carbon and its compounds in detail. Why? Our body, our human body, or all organisms' body are mainly contain carbon and its compounds. We use carbon in our daily life. We can't live without carbon. You may hear about glucose, carbohydrate. It's a compound of carbon. It gives energy for our daily life. And another important thing about carbon is that carbon produces more than millions of compounds. Carbon make compounds. It is higher. Number of carbon compounds is higher than that of compounds that make all other elements. That means we can see carbon in most of the organic compounds. That means the compounds which are connected to lives is mainly carbon compounds. And also fossil fuels. You may hear about fossil fuels, petrol, diesel, coal, etc. All contains carbons. All the fossil fuels contain carbon. And also it occurs in number of minerals. Carbon atoms combines other element as well as carbon itself. Carbon has a unique property of forming a long chain of carbon atoms. This long chain serves as a backbone and forms number of compounds by changing each element in this carbon chain. You may hear about alcohol, acids, acetic acid, and many of organic acids like acetic acids, formic acid, citric acid, etc. And also alcohol. A lot of other compounds. All compounds contains carbon as main compound in it. And also a unique property of carbon is forming allotropes. There are 3 allotropes for carbon. That means the compound which contains only carbon. In the same physical state, but shows totally different properties. Physical and chemical properties are totally different. But the compound contains only carbon and stay in the same state also. We are going to discuss all about this carbon compounds and its allotrope, etc. And it's important to us. In our previous chapter, we studied that carbon is an element belongs in the 14th group. Its atomic number is 6. That means its valency is 4. What is its valency? What is atomic number? Atomic number is the number of proton in an atom. Proton and electron are same. electrons are distributed in different shells. You may remember Bohr's atom model. In Bohr's atom model, there is different shells K, L, M, N, etc. K shell contains a maximum of 2 electrons. L shell contains a maximum of 8 electrons. M shell contains a maximum of 18 electrons, etc. etc. And each and every element try to attain noble gas properties. That means its outermost shell is contain only 8 atoms, octets, to try to complete octet. For attaining noble gas properties, every atom try to do chemical properties, chemical combinations, chemical reactions. For example, oxygen, its outermost shell contains 6 electrons. Oxygen's atomic number is 8. K shell contains 2 electrons. L shell contains 6 electrons. So, for attaining noble gas property, oxygen needs 2 more electrons to complete 8 octet in its L shell. For that, oxygen shares 1 electron from one hydrogen atom and 1 electron from another hydrogen atom, and it attains stability. And also in the case of hydrogen, it needs 1 electron for completing noble gas configuration. That means 2 in K shell. So hydrogen also ready to share 1 electron from oxygen and attain noble gas properties. This 2 hydrogen 1 on oxygen forms another compound, water, H2O. So the valency of hydrogen is 1. That means it can share 1 electron. The valency of oxygen is 2. That means it can share 2 electrons. Now we can discuss about carbon. The atomic number of carbon is 6. That means its K shell contains 2 electrons and L shell contains 4 electrons. For attaining noble gas property, noble gas configuration, carbon needs 4 more electrons. For the energy problems, carbon can never give up 4 electrons to another atom for attaining noble gas property, 2 electrons in the K shell, or it can receive 4 electrons from any other elements. For attaining noble gas property, that means 8 electrons in L shell. So the only way to share electrons from others, covalent bonding. You studied about covalent bonding in your previous chapter. Covalent bonding. For covalent bonding, carbon can share 4 electrons to 4 other atoms. This is a special property of carbon. This property is known as tetravalency. Tetra means 4. The valency of carbon is 4. This is an important property of carbon. It helps to make a number of compounds. You can clearly understand about tetravalency feature in preceding portions. And also, another important property of carbon is catenation. Catenation means the unique property of forming long chains. All other atoms can bond with 2 or 3 similar atoms. That means 2 oxygen atoms can bond together. Some other elements, 3 or 4 atoms can, same atoms can bond together. But in the case of carbon, it can bond any number of carbons. An allotrope of carbon known as fullerene contains 60 carbon atoms. That means it can make bonds to number of other carbon atoms. This is a unique property of carbon. it also helps carbon to make a number of compounds. You can see some chains of carbons. Here 5 carbon atoms. Here also 4 carbon atoms. 4 carbon atoms bond in different fashions. 3 carbon atoms just like a ring. So carbon can make number of different types of sharing. It may be chain, branch or ring, etc. etc. This is known as catenation. These two properties, tetravalency and catenation, these two properties helps carbon to form a number of compounds. The carbon-carbon covalent bond is strong in nature. We already discussed about the long carbon chains act as a backbone of many compounds. It is very strong. Carbon-carbon covalent bond is very strong. That is why it acts just like a backbone. Backbone is very strong, just like us. When backbone is strong, it can make a number of compounds. Various group of elements can attach to these compounds. That is why it forms many different compounds. You may hear about vinegar and alcohol. In normal case, you may hear about alcohol. We take toddy alcohol from coconut tree or some other places, and we can change it as vinegar. Okay, surka in Malayalam, and also sakkar, I think, in Urdu. It can change from alcohol to vinegar. Similarly, here also alcohol and vinegar contains same number of carbon atoms, but the compounds that attaches to this carbon backbone is changed. So compound is totally different. We can discuss in our preceding chapters, preceding portions. The total number of carbon formed by carbon exceeds the total number of compounds formed by all other elements of the periodic table. And also, carbon forms single, double and triple covalent bonds with other carbon atoms. Carbon-carbon bond is maybe single, double or triple. We can break this triple bond and double bond and make change it as single bond, etc. etc. A lot of chemical reactions occur in this carbon-carbon chains. The number of carbon compounds is formed is so large, so a separate branch known as organic chemistry is devoted to the study of these compounds. The organic chemistry is the branch of chemistry which deals with the study of organic compounds. That means the compounds containing carbon. The compounds containing carbon, we can call it as organic compounds. So a special branch, organic chemistry, deals with the study of compounds containing carbon. We can discuss in our preceding portions about the carbon compounds and allotropes of carbon, etc. etc. In our body itself, we eat food and we get carbohydrates. Carbohydrate contains carbon. When oxygen is entered to our body, this carbohydrate is react with this oxygen and produce carbon dioxide. So plants prepare food by using carbon dioxide. That means it takes carbon. So the life in Earth can't exist without carbon. So carbon is very important for us. In our next class we can discuss about the allotropes of carbon.